June 23, 2012. A police officer is arrested on a train near Vladivostok, Russia. But this isn't just any cop. This is Mikhail Popkov, and he's about to confess to crimes that would shock the country. A man who used his uniform to lure 86 people to remote locations, places they would never return from. For 2 decades, he lived a perfect double life. Respected police lieutenant, loving husband, devoted father. All while transforming into what Russian media would call the werewolf, or Chikatilo's shadow. But how did a trusted police officer become Russia's most brutal criminal? This is the story of how a protector turned predator, transforming from a trusted guardian of the law into the nation's most notorious serial killer. To understand this story, we need to go back to Angarsk, Russia in the 1990s. This industrial city, 40 kilometers from Irkutsk in Siberia, was built by Soviet prison labor after World War II. By the 90s, it was surrounded by 6 prison colonies. When inmates were released, many stayed in Angarsk, having nowhere else to go. After the collapse of the USSR, Angarsk descended into chaos. Around 10 criminal gangs fought open battles in the streets, despite the city only having 260,000 residents. Murders happened daily. Citizens walked in groups during daylight and took taxis at night, fearing bandits and drug addicts. Police were overwhelmed and underpaid. It was in this lawless environment that Mikhail Popkov worked as an operative duty officer at Angarsk's Central Police Station. His colleagues called him Misha the Smile, or Misha Gwynplaine, after Victor Hugo's character with a permanent smile. He was a candidate master of sports in biathlon, known for being helpful and professional. One of Popkov's former colleagues said his professional level was above average. He was head and shoulders above his peers. There were early warning signs that everyone missed. In 1996, Popkov shot and killed a robber who allegedly resisted arrest. His colleagues praised his decisiveness. At home, Popkov was becoming increasingly paranoid about his wife Elena, who worked in the passport office at the same police station. He claimed to have found used condoms in their trash. Years later, it was confirmed his wife had been unfaithful with a colleague named Alexei Mulyavin. Instead of confronting her, he began developing a hatred for women he deemed immoral. Popkov later admitted, "Every morning, I'd wake up and check if I hadn't killed my wife during the night. I stayed because I wanted my daughter to have a complete family." This double life became his norm. In his own words, "In one life, I was an ordinary person. In the other, I committed murders that I carefully concealed from everyone." Popkov's killing spree started in 1992, the same year he joined the police force. His method was always similar. He would patrol Angarsk's streets in his police Niva vehicle, looking for women walking alone, particularly those who had been drinking. Using his uniform to gain their trust, he'd offer them rides home. His victim selection followed a disturbing pattern. Most were between 19 and 28 years old, with some between 35 and 40. All were of medium height, 155 to 170 centimeters, and except for one, all were intoxicated when killed. If a woman refused his advances, he would actually drive her home safely. But if she agreed to drink with him or have sex, she had proven herself immoral in his mind and would never be seen alive again. One of the few who survived was a 15-year-old girl named Svetlana. In January 1998, she was found naked and unconscious in the snow with severe head injuries. She identified Popkov as her attacker, describing how he showed his police ID and offered her a ride. Despite her testimony, his wife Elena provided him with an alibi, and the case was dismissed. He would drive his victims to remote locations, where he'd rape and murder them with shocking brutality. His weapons, taken from police evidence rooms, included axes, knives, screwdrivers, and batons. In 9 cases, death came from multiple axe blows. He would strip their bodies naked and dump them along the roads leading from Angarsk, particularly near the Siberian highway and the Krasnoyarsk-Irkutsk bypass road. After the murders, he would meticulously clean his car and tools to leave no traces. As a police officer, he knew exactly what investigators would look for. The most frightening thing about Mikhail Popkov was his ability to lead a perfect double life. After a night of murder, he would return home, have breakfast with his family, and go to work, as if nothing had happened. He attended his daughter's school events, went to the movies with his wife, celebrated birthdays with friends. No one suspected that the friendly family man turned into a brutal killer at night. As a police officer, Popkov was involved in investigations, helped victims of crimes, and hunted criminals, while he himself was the most dangerous criminal in the region. Most disturbing of all, Popkov would often return to crime scenes the next day as part of the investigating team. In one chilling instance, he returned to a murder site earlier after realizing he'd lost his police identification token there. To his shock, he found his victim still alive. Without hesitation, he finished her off with a shovel. This wasn't an isolated incident. Popkov's involvement in the investigations of his own murders allowed him to manipulate evidence and steer investigations away from himself. His intimate knowledge of police procedures made him a particularly dangerous and elusive killer. For years, police failed to connect the murders. In the chaos of the 1990s Angarsk, where 2 murders occurred daily, each case was treated separately. The breakthrough should have come in 1998, when investigator Nikolai Kitaev, known for solving the case of serial killer Vasily Kulik, noticed disturbing patterns. Kitaev analyzed 15 unsolved murders and found striking similarities. The victims were similar in build, found naked, and most had been drinking. More importantly, the killer could bypass police checkpoints that stopped every car at night. Kitaev compiled a list of 7 police officers as suspects, though Popkov wasn't among them yet. But when Kitaev presented his findings to Irkutsk's regional prosecutor Anatoly Merslyakov, he was told to keep quiet. He said, quote, "If Moscow finds out, we'll all be fired." The investigation was effectively stopped for 5 years. In 2001, Kitaev was dismissed when regional transport prosecutions were reorganized. By 2002, after a damning article in Moskovsky Komsomolets newspaper reached the Prosecutor General's office, a new investigation team was formed. Led by Evgeny Kostarev and Colonel Sergei Derzavin, they faced immediate resistance from local law enforcement who didn't want to admit they'd missed a serial killer in their ranks. Despite examining thousands of pieces of evidence and interviewing countless witnesses, the investigation moved slowly. DNA testing was expensive, about $10,000 per test, and could only be done in Moscow. They could only afford to test 5 samples per year. In March 2012, after 2 decades of hunting, a breakthrough finally came. Investigators had systematically worked through a massive list of suspects using 3 key criteria: blood type B, access to a Niva vehicle, and connection to law enforcement. From an initial pool of 30,000 suspects, they narrowed it down to 600 men who matched multiple criteria. Working alphabetically through DNA testing, they finally reached the letter P. When they tested Mikhail Popkov, they got a match to genetic evidence collected from 3 victims back in 2003. Modern science had caught up with him. On June 23, 2012, as Popkov attempted to transport a newly purchased car near Vladivostok, a special operations team led by investigator Artem Dubinin boarded his train 2 stations before the final destination. He surrendered without resistance and immediately began confessing to murders. Psychiatric experts found no mental illness but diagnosed him with homicidomania, an uncontrollable urge to kill. Unlike many serial killers who kill for sexual gratification, Popkov's drive to murder had become an addiction in itself. In a chilling display of pride, Popkov would correct investigators' crime scene maps. He remembered every detail of his crimes except his victims' faces. To him, they weren't people, just objects in his mission to cleanse society of what he deemed immoral women. The true scale of Popkov's crimes proved staggering. In January 2015, he was first sentenced to life imprisonment for 22 murders and 2 attempted murders. But this was just the beginning. In prison, Popkov continued to confess to more murders. The investigations were reopened and the number of confirmed victims continued to rise. In a second trial, Popkov was sentenced in December 2018 for 56 more murders. In 2021, he was convicted of 2 additional killings, and in November 2023, 3 more murders were added to his record.
Каждый надеется, что вот ему будет ответ или на, как оно есть, как оно духует перед ним. И почему-то никогда никто не задумывается, что я просто могу ответить так, как мне выгодно, или как мне легче, ну, удобно.
His final confirmed victim count now stands at 86, 85 women and 1 male police officer, making him Russia's most prolific serial killer, far surpassing Andrei Chikatilo's 53 victims. Today, Popkov is held in the Torbevsky Central Prison in Mordovia. He continues to receive attention from investigators who are now checking his possible connection to 50 more unsolved murders along the 3,000-kilometer route from Vladivostok to Ulan-Ude. Even from prison, he shows no real remorse. In January 2023, he requested to join Russia's war in Ukraine. His request was denied. His wife Elena now lives with one of the former investigators who worked on his case, while his daughter has moved to another Siberian city. Mikhail Popkov's case stands as a dark reminder that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they wear badges, carry authority, and smile at their neighbors. Sometimes the wolf comes dressed as a shepherd. His story also reveals how systemic corruption and societal chaos allowed a predator to operate undetected for decades. In the end, it wasn't brilliant detective work that caught him. It was DNA technology that hadn't existed when his spree began. The true number of his victims may never be known, but one thing is certain. The story of Russia's most prolific serial killer will haunt law enforcement for generations to come. The case of Mikhail Popkov shows us the frightening ability of some people to lead a perfect double life. A loving family man and respected police officer who became a brutal killer at night. If you found this story disturbing, you need to hear about Alexander Pichushkin, Moscow's chessboard killer who turned a park into his personal hunting ground. Click here to watch that video next. And don't forget to subscribe to East Crime Stories for more true crime cases from Eastern Europe and former Soviet Union, where decades of societal upheaval created perfect conditions for some of history's most notorious crimes.